Well, good morning, everybody. It's me, Mitch. Being in the great mood that I'm in today, I decided it's time for me to celebrate and do some cooking. And what better to do than something enormous and gigantic? And that's what I'm going to do. In my chest freezer, I had this 5-pound brick of ground beef that was on sale at Aldi's. I think I paid $10 for it. So not only is this going to be a cheap dish, but hopefully it'll be a terrific dish and net me out about 5 meals. And after it's cooked, I'll probably package up the leftovers and freeze them so I can just grab it out of the freezer, thaw it out, put it in the microwave, and have myself a quick and easy meal. So I've got this 5 pounds of ground beef here, and I'm going to make a meatloaf. I'm going to make a ginormous meatloaf with bacon on top of it. I'm going to bake it in the oven. I'm going to cook it until the internal temperature comes up to about 160 degrees, and I'm going to use my meter, Bluetooth thermometer, to monitor it so that I can look at my cell phone anytime during the 2+ hours that this is going to cook and know exactly when it's cooked right. So without any more delays, let me get started. And because I'm going to be elbow deep in ground beef here, I'm going to put some gloves on. Not so much because I'm actually worried about germs or anything, but just to keep my hands clean. Always like these adventures. Either that, or you never know when the need to do some surgery might come along, and this way I'll be prepared in advance with my rubber glove. Love that sound. Okay, let's start. Got a big bowl here. Let's start by cutting this open, putting all this meatloaf, which I hope will actually fit into this big bowl. And let's see, we can make this as quick and as neat as possible. So there's a minimum of cleanup. Well, doesn't this look good? This is 27, oops, it is dripping. 2773 ground beef. God, this is going to fill up this big bowl. I think I'll make it work. This is 2773 ground beef. Already made a mess. Let me just wipe this up real quick because I like to clean as I go. There you go. So I've got all of this ground beef here, and before I do that, I'm going to put 4 eggs in this, which I want to beat up first, just so I don't have to mix the ground beef quite as much. So we're going to take 4 eggs. There we go. These are nice pasture-raised eggs from Sam's Club. They have a nice yellow-orangish yolk, which is very nice. So excuse me while I beat my eggs. Thank you. Now I'm going to take this opportunity before I go any further to preheat my oven to 350 degrees and get that going. Also in this mix, I'm going to use a little the Malden smoked salt, and I'm going to use some panko pork rind crumbs. Instead of the traditional breadcrumbs, that you might put into a meatloaf, and that ought to hold it all together. And that's going to be pretty much the basis of the seasoning. And then once I get this thing formed, I will take some of this thick Wright's bacon, put it on top. And I'll have to keep an eye on how the bacon is cooking. I don't want to overcook it, but in the meantime, as it renders out, it will add some good bacon fat to this thing. And with all the fat in this hamburger, it shouldn't dry out. So let's start. Let's start by, before I get my hands too dirty, let's start by sprinkling kind of a generous amount of this smoked salt on there. I think that'd be enough. And I think probably got enough of these pork rind crumbs left in here. Let's just sprinkle them onto the mixture too. I just use it all. There we go. That's probably somewhere between a half a cup and a cup. Precision measurements. And let's pour the egg mixture over the top of this thing. And now comes the fun part. So, feet first, guys, feet first. And we'll start to squish all this up and try to mix it up into a big hunkin' meatloaf and try to keep it all in the bowl as opposed to getting it all over the counter. And this will take a minute or two. But this is what I like. I am an adventurous cook. I'm an adventurous cook. I love to experiment. Interestingly enough, these experiments usually come out pretty good. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they don't. But most of the time, surprisingly, I had it pretty well figured in advance. So we want to make sure that we get this really completely and thoroughly mixed up, which is going to take a little while, so I may edit out a part of this and come back when I think I've got it enough.
A few moments later.
Okay, been doing this for 3 or 5 minutes, somewhere in there, and it looks like everything is pretty well mixed up. I kept flipping it over like that. Not too much of a mess on the counter. Most of it stayed in the bowl. This was the biggest bowl I had. Basically a salad bowl, which has remained unused for a long time because I no longer eat salads. So we have that mixed up, and let me quickly rinse off my gloves here. I don't know if that actually is going to solve anything, but I have a half sheet pan over here that I have lined with aluminum foil just for the purpose of making it easier to clean. And let me just clean up a little bit of this counter so I don't get it on the bottom of the sheet pan. There you go. And put this salt away. What we're going to do now is going to take this gigantic meatball and plop it right down in the center of this sheet pan and shape it in to a gigantic meatloaf. Look at that. This is actually fun. So, I have researched this, and the consensus of opinion in all of the recipe gurus that you find on Google, and you Google how to make a meatloaf, is that it will retain its shape in a pan like this, and it's actually the preferred method of doing it. So there we go. We have a huge meatloaf. And I think, for the time being, I'm done with the gloves. Ah, perfect. So, what we're going to do is going to take this gigantic meatloaf that I have here, and I'm going to take my meter thermometer, and I'm going to stick it in to this meatloaf from the side here, but stick it all the way in past the mark, so it should be in the center. And worst comes to worst, as it's getting towards done, if somehow this falls or sags, I've got my little thermometer here that I can go in and just simply check it until it's done. But I'm going to go with the meter first. Now I'm going to take some of my Wright's thick bacon here, and I think we can just do it the long ways like this. Four slices should hang in there. So let's space this so they don't fall off the meatloaf, and if they fall off the meatloaf, so be it. And one more. And I hope they stay. But that looks like it just might hold together, and we'll see what happens. So my oven is preheated. I've got this big 5-pound plus meatloaf with 4 eggs, almost a cup of pork rinds in it, 4 strips of Wright's extra thick bacon on top. I've got an oven that just heated up to 350 degrees. I'm going to put this in. I'm going to set a timer for 2 hours. But I don't need the timer because I've got the Bluetooth thermometer, which will tell me when it gets to 160 degrees. So let's put this hunk of meatloaf in the oven, shut the door, and turn on the range hood, and we'll be back to check on it a little later. Well, let's take a look, see how it's going here. Internal temperature says is about 120 degrees now. Let's take a look at it. Wow. Incredible. Looks like it's cooking pretty good. We'll be back. Okay, it says 1 minute remaining. I'm at 152 degrees on the meter app. And we're going to take it out here in a minute and let it rest. I'm going to check it with my external thermometer as well, just to make sure. That I had the meter set in the right place. Okay, it's time to take it out here. Got these nice little silicone, I guess you could call them oven mitts, but they'll do the trick. Let's take it out, being careful not to spill anything. This is going to be heavy, and I'm going to put it right here on the top. And wow, doesn't that look good. Holy mackerel. Now, before I shut the oven off, just for fun, let me take my thermometer and take a reading of this thing down into it. And in the real center of this thing, it's not cooked near enough. So, the problem with I think using the meter thermometer in something this thick is you have to get it down in the middle like this, which is going to be the last to cook. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to replace the thermometer in there, and it says 114 degrees. So we will put this back in. I had originally estimated about 2 hours of cooking time, and that's how we learn. Put the meter thermometer in where it belongs. And of course, the thermometer is going to hit this. There we go. Okay. So we got it back in there. We're going to let it cook until it comes up to 155 degrees in the center. And I guess that's to be expected in a thick meatloaf like this. So we'll be back. Okay, it's telling me to remove it from the heat. Internal temperature of 153 so far. And let's do that. Let's do that now. So the total cook time of this thing is between an hour and 15 minutes and an hour and a half. I didn't time the whole thing exactly, but I think that's pretty close. So let's make sure we don't drop this thing, because there's a lot of hot grease and juice down in the bottom of it. And I think we can shut off the oven and the hood. And we've got our 155 degrees in the center. So I'm going to go with that. I am going to trust that meter is in the right place. And I'm going to go ahead and pull it out. Put it in the sink because it's hot. Let it cool. Now, that looks terrific. That looks terrific. Let's take a look and see what we've got here. Look at that. That looks just terrific. It's huge. It's huge. So now I've got me a ginormous meatloaf. I'm going to let it rest for about 10 minutes. I'm going to cut a little piece off the end and taste it. Then I'm going to put it in the refrigerator, let it cool off and firm up. Come back, cut it into 5 servings. Vacuum seal 4 of those, put them in the freezer, and eat the last serving for my dinner today. And that's my watch telling me that it's done. So we'll be back after it's rested. Okay, let's cut off a serving here. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to cut this bacon. So I would say that if that's 2, 3, 4, I would say that I'm going to cut it right about here. And we'll see what happens. Yeah, it looks like it's cutting the bacon pretty good. That's why you need sharp knives. I don't want to cut it through the tin foil, because it'll all leak in, then I'll just have to clean up the pan. So what we've got is a huge meatloaf. Holy mackerel. Wow, 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 look at that. Look at that. That looks great. That looks just great. That is cooked perfectly. Perfectly. Isn't that something? Look at that. Look at that. Look. Wow. So we're going to let that cool off a little bit and then put it in the fridge so that we can vacuum seal 4 servings. And I'm going to go ahead and attack this serving right here. So we're going to taste this. We're gonna do the official taste test of this meatloaf, and we're gonna see how it turned out. It looks fabulous. Wow. Probably still pretty hot. I'm gonna make sure that I have an adequate amount of salt, hopefully not too much, but we'll see. The bacon turned out to be cooked just perfectly. Not overcooked and not undercooked. Mmm. It's wonderful. Next time, just a little bit less salt, because it's salty, but it's not too salty. And I like my food salty, but I would go with a little less salt, but the flavor and the texture are perfect. I love this. God, I love this. So I would recommend that you try this. It's easy to do. It's quick. And you can make 5 meals out of 5 pounds of hamburger and a few eggs, a few strips of bacon. Doesn't get any cheaper than that, especially when it's this good.
2 hours later.
Okay, after a few hours in the refrigerator, I'm going to vacuum seal these 4 servings of meatloaf, put them in the freezer. Then I can heat them up in the microwave or however. So let's cut this into 4 pieces. It's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Put them in the refrigerator just to firm it up a little before I started actually handling it. And I've got 2 different size bags here, which I'm going to try and see what it fits in best. So I've got a narrow bag. It'd be interesting to see if it fits in here. Maybe a little too wide. I may have to use the bigger bags. But let's see if this won't fit into this bag here. Looks like it will. Perfect. There's no way to do this without getting my hands greasy, evidently. There we go. Okay. So it fits into that bag nicely. And put our first bag in here. And start sealing it. And we've got 3 more of these smaller bags. And here's the second piece. We'll put that in this bag. And there's our first. There's our first serving. All vacuum sealed, ready to go in the freezer. And this is the WeVac sealer that I'm using. It's fabulous. And I've got a link on my webpage to it. And you get a 15% discount still on this WeVac. And I know many people have bought them and they really love them. And it is a chamber sealer. and it works just great. So that's it. There's 1, 2, 3, and number 4 in the vacuum sealer. There's my last one. And we'll take these over to the freezer and put all of them in. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And there we have it, 5 whole meals. And there we have it, and 5 meals. 1 I just ate, 4 in the freezer. And there we have it, and 5 meals. 1 I just ate, 4 in the freezer. $5 for the, $10 for total of the hamburger. Let's be generous and say $2 for the 4 eggs. Let's say $2 worth of panko pork rind crumbs. $14 tops for 5 meals. You don't eat carnivore any cheaper than this, and certainly no more delicious than this. So there you have it, my ginormous meatloaf adventure. Take the rest of the day off and eat meat. You can go to my website at oldguycarnivore.com. On there I've got a page that says links to stuff I use every day. These links take you to Amazon affiliate links of mine, and when you buy something through these links, it helps support the channel. Here is everything I use, every kitchen tool, gadget, and everything else. If you think, and there's no obligation, but if you think you might want to get some of the stuff that I use in my videos and do this yourself, whether it be food, supplements, kitchen appliances, tools, gadgets, frying pans, whatever, I would really appreciate it. oldguycarnivore.com, links to stuff I use page. Doesn't cost you a dime more, and you're really helping me continue to do what I do.